Hi guys, what I'm going to do here is a little rolling bassline tutorial. I'll probably just let you hear it quickly if I pull it from here. Okay, so it's fairly simple. First of all, when I'm using my drums, I tend to use this short circuit 2 plug, and it's free. Mainly because it doesn't really use any CPU or any overheads at all. So if I show you the kick channel, I've got 3 kicks from Vengeance here, which I can just play. I usually put in maybe 7 or 8 different kicks and then play the track and change them as it's playing, which I can show you briefly here. Kick channel. So if I highlight these, I can just swap between them. Take these markers back. So what I've got here is a sidechain channel, which I always have separate to the kick, just in case I want to change the patterns to it at all. That's just set to silent. You can see where it's being sent to here. So if I solo that and play it by itself, you get no audio at all. So if we set a loop point here, sidechain on, kick on, that's fairly straightforward. Closed hi-hat. Before we go any further, I'll just show you this little pattern here. What I usually do, not always, but usually, is I will put some hi-hats in on 16ths. Put snap back on. Can't remember how many hi-hats I've got here now. Yeah, there's some. Click, 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 click. And I'll turn snap back off once I've got the 4 in place. And you can do things like selecting the second, oh, didn't want to do that, the second and the 4th hat, and when you've got the snap off, you can, come on, no, it's not working, you can just pull the start of the 2nd and 4th hat back manually, and that gives it a little bit of groove. So if you listen to the hats by themselves, they're kind of, instead of, if I turn these ones off again, I'll show you what I mean. Oh, snap back on. You tell I'm not prepared for this. Right, so if I copy that over, what you'll hear is the difference between the first lot of hats here, which have got the manual groove applied, and the second lot here, which is straight 16ths. So let's play them. It's very subtle, but it's there. Let's put the original ones back. So where were we? We've got the kick on and the hi-hats on. What I've done for the open hi-hats is put 1, which is dead centre, another one slightly left, and another one slightly right. So they fill out the stereo field a bit. Put the hats back, and then a straightforward clap. Now, this is all fairly standard stuff. I've not really taken a lot of time on these drum samples, because for the purposes of a demo it doesn't really matter that much. So let's switch that off. Now, first bass layer is fairly classic. I'll open up the patterns here. Right, so we've got something like, just doing that, which is fairly classic trance stuff. And if you look at the channel itself, I've got a compressor. The first one, this is a sidechain function in Cubase, and it's ducked slightly with my sidechain kick, which is the same pattern as the main kick, just to give that kick a little bit of space. But then I've also got another compressor after that. If you look at the attack, I'm letting the transients through a little bit, so you've got that pluckiness. The ratio is fairly high, but if I switch that off, again it's subtle, but it's a little bit untidy. So I'll leave that compressor on there, just to evens out those hits. Then I've high-passed it, just to take some of those really subby notes out of it, which you don't need, and taken off some of the top end, and pushed it up at around 2000 Hz, because that's where I think that's kind of twangy there, and it needs it to push through the mix later on. I might not do that at this stage, but later on it's quite important. And then just some delay. You turn that off, you can hear the effect it has. Quite subtle. That's on a send. The mid bass I'll leave for a second, because it's not really a bass, I've just called it a bass. The next one will be a sub, which it's something that I tend to use fairly quietly. I'm actually on little bud headphones at the moment, so I can hardly hear it at all, just because of the way this is routed for recording audio. But it's there to boost or underpin the bottom end. It's not something you can really hear in the mix, but it's something that you can hear when it's not there. I'll show you that later on. And then I've got a layer for the sub, which by itself is quite nasty and nasally, but combined with the sub, it works quite well together. They reinforce each other. And then the final one is a 16th. I'll just stop this a second. Now, I'm a bit of a fan of these 16ths because, well, it's old school. And if I play it without the sidechain, it's quite nasty, really, quite noisy. That's the sidechain compressor. Without the EQ, it's very boomy. So the first thing I did was high-passed it, and in the process of EQing it for the tutorial, I've identified these two peaks as something that will help push it through the mix a little bit. I mean, I may end up scooping out something here at about 2K as well for that other octave bass, because I think I boosted that then. Yeah. So I've messed up the EQ a little bit here, but really what I'd probably want to do is just take that out to help those sit together. Sidechain back on. Now, if you switch the sidechain channel off, you get that very da-da-da-da-da-da with the 16th bass. Switch it back on again, it's pumping a bit. So, if we add those all back in one at a time. I'll still leave that mid bass for a second. Bring in the sub bass. That might be a little bit loud now, that 16th. Okay. Now back onto this mid bass. I shouldn't really have called it a bass. What I've got here, it's kind of weird. In fact, it's called a bass. Let me switch these effects off. I also added a phaser to this. So it started off as a normal bassy sound. I wanted something that moved around a bit. So what I've done is I've EQ'd it. So it's much twangier. And then I've added some delay and quite a long reverb. Oh no, I left the delay off, sorry. and then finally a phaser, which I added on. This was a preset I used, but I added on a phaser, so you can hear it moving around a bit more. Now, if I play it, the way it's reacting with the reverb, it's adding some fizz to the top end. So if I take this, if I put this on mute and now play what you've already heard, and now I'll add this mid bass in. It's just add something nice at the top. I don't know why I added this, but I've just a little bit of interest with this lead and just simple sounds. I think these two I added were rubbish. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Remove. I did put a pad in as well, but it didn't really work. Sidechain, obviously. In fact, let's see if I think that pad just might need some. Oh no, I've pushed it already at the top end. Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to keep the pad in there, it needs some work. It needs panning, widening out, and some EQing. It might even be the wrong sound altogether, who knows. So let's switch it off. That's it. What I've done over here is there's a slight variation on the end, because I was just messing around with something else. If you listen to this section, that's something I've used before. I can't remember in what though. The only difference I've done with this is I've taken this kick channel, and the kicks are on these notes here. It's fairly straightforward. So you've got the kicks on 16ths. All the rest of the drums are exactly the same, except that when you start getting onto the bass sounds themselves, if you listen to the octave bass, they all start following the kick pattern. So not exactly though. Let's do it with the kick as well. The reason I've done that and put it in here is because it's a nice way to do a transition. I've used it quite a lot. Let's put this mid bass in. I think that's exactly this. Yeah, so that's that. I hope you found this useful. It's fairly straightforward. I think what I'll be doing next is I'll take this idea. It's not really a track, it's just an idea, and I will try to pull it out into more of a structure, and I'll start putting in some transitions and some sweeps. I'll probably develop this lead a bit more as well, because they're not really leads, they're more sort of backing melodies. That's that. Okay, thanks for watching.